let's get started.
Nice.
I am really excited to have these two guys in the studio today. You recognize them if you're watching on YouTube. If you're just listening on Spotify, you'll recognize their voices immediately. They've both been on the program before. This is the new guard, the new wave of safety professionals in our region, and we are really fortunate, in my opinion, to have a really impressive group of young, dedicated safety professionals throughout the Midwest. I have the good fortune of working with many of them on a day-to-day basis, but these two in particular, they're blushing. I'm trying to get them to blush. They won't blush. They're not going to give me that satisfaction.
So sometimes you don't see all the blushing.
Not necessarily. A stone cold, exactly.
Yeah. No, I'm fair-skinned. You'll see me blush.
But Ezra Schlecht, Anthony Blake,
Yes, sir.
I get to call them friends and colleagues, and man, these guys are... They're the next generation of safety people that are going to be doing it when I get to ride off into the sunset, hopefully very soon. So thanks for joining me, guys. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
We talk often, but I wanted to talk a little bit. I think you both worked for the Nebraska Department of Labor Onsite Consultation Group, which is a beloved sponsor of the podcast, and our good friend Jim Cover. And I really wanted to hear more about onsite consultation. And so I'd like to start, if we could, with just talking a little bit about your journey, how you got to consultation, why you went to consultation. Maybe we can even talk a little bit about consultation itself, what it does, how it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
The inside scoop, stuff that you feel comfortable sharing, the reality of it. And then we can talk about whatever after that. But let's get started.
Yeah.
Ezra, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about your journey to...
Yeah, my journey to consultation is extremely interesting, right? We all know Jim's predecessor.
Yes, we do.
So I was working in the private world at the time. First real adult job, right? Got my teeth on safety, took a bunch of classes, learned a bunch of stuff. So super fortunate for that. But I was, safety guys can always do more, right?
Right.
So, and I was doing lots of different things, right? That's a whole nother story in and of itself. So I was fed up. I wanted something different. So I just started shooting it out there, right? And I'm not educated, right? I didn't go to school.
You're a military guy.
Yeah.
You're a Marine.
So that kind of, plus or minus, right? So neither here nor there. I applied to tons of jobs. Consultation was one of them. And then out of the blue, it had been so long since I applied, I forgot that I applied.
Right.
I get this
That's
phone
the
call.
government. Yep.
I get this phone call, and he was telling me, who he was, and I'm like, going through the Rolodex, like, what is this? So that's kind of how I got there.
That's hilarious.
And
so
then,
who called you? Was it a HR person or
no,
was it Cover,
like the program.
Oh, it was Eldon?
Eldon,
Yeah.
Eldon, okay.
Yeah, he called me, and I'm like, what's going on? And then the interview process was super unique in and of itself. Like, one, because of Eldon, but two, because it's just the way that the state operates.
Yeah,
right? It's
no doubt.
super unique. But that's what I did, and I was fortunate to jump right into classes, just kind of, because there's, the set curriculum that you need to do, which I got fairly quickly, and I got a couple bonus right away, and then they were budgeting wise, so we went to a ton of classes. But so I was super lucky to kind of jump right in, and
very good,
minimal downtime, sitting there twiddling my fingers. But
yeah,
got to do a few ride-alongs with the team there.
So we'll talk a little bit about like who your mentors were within the program when you got there, and I'd love to talk about the training experience as well, because the OTI and things like that, we share that in common.
Yeah.
How did you end up there, man?
Yeah, definitely. So
Same kind of story, or
a little different, but I think I went the academic route slightly. So I got a BS in biology from UNO. Didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I was always interested in science and medicine. And then I found the MPH program at UNMC, the College of Public Health, and they had a specific environmental and occupational health concentration. So I went through that curriculum. It was mostly online, which I don't tend to recommend. Online education is unique, but you get out of it what you put into it, really, at the end of the day. And so I went through that program. And then in my second to last semester, I took a hazard assessment course with our certified industrial hygienist at the college. And at the time, I believe there was only, among you, like 6 in the state. So I got to learn from him directly. He now went to NIOSH in Cincinnati, where he worked previously. But for my big capstone project, which is equivalent to your master's thesis, I did an indoor air quality assessment of a laboratory where they were smoking out mice with wood chip smoke. And all the other employees in that area were getting overexposed to the wood smoke because this surgeon, who wasn't really a researcher, was using a pellet smoker inside of a mice laboratory. And so it was an occupational aspect where other people were getting sick and, you know, vomiting essentially. So I did air quality assessment of that, and I was like, whoa, this industrial hygiene field is really cool. So just after grad school, like literally the week I graduated, I got a call from Onsite Safety Consultation for an industrial hygienist. Now, originally I applied for North Platte, and so I had the conversations with my wife. If, you know, for those who don't, or who are listening who don't live in Nebraska, North Platte, you know, is a good 4 hours away from Omaha. It's kind of a railroad town. I had a buddy who worked for UP who lived there. A little more rural, but yeah, we had a kid at the time, and it was like, we're going to pack up and move to North Platte. But some things happened at the state. There were some changes that occurred, and they were able to get me in Lincoln. So I got to work directly under Jim for about 4 years, and just like Ezra, I went to OTI many times a year, spent a few weeks in, you know, Arlington Heights. And
the OSHA Training Institute.
Yep.
Which is interesting because the consultants go through the same training as the enforcement folks.
Yeah.
I was on the enforcement side. You guys were on the consultation side. But Cover and I think, took classes together.
Yeah. It's awesome, it's a great facility in Arlington Heights there. Schaumburg's extremely nice. But yeah, you're butting up with actual, you know, OSHA enforcement all over the country. So I met people from Alaska, Hawaii, still friends with them on LinkedIn. It's just a really cool opportunity.
Yeah. New co-shows, you know, tenured ones, kind of the full gamut, right?
Absolutely. So. Everybody together. Because it is one family, truthfully. There are distinct differences and separations that are intentional, but we all train together. Actually, I thought you guys got a lot more training than we got, frankly. I can remember when I went on board with OSHA in 96, and they started sending us to training. You guys were always there. The consultants were always there, and then I'd bump into you out in the world, and they're like, I just got back from I was like, I didn't get that class.
Yeah.
I think I spent like 3 Super Bowls in the hotel room. Just like months.
Yeah. Up there at the Residence Inn or whatever. You
were lucky enough to get bed bugs, too. I think I had just started. I just started, and Ezra started before me at consultation, and he was out of the office. I think you were in California.
I was out in California, Sacramento. I went out there to get the last required class that I needed, and it was a major chain, right? Like, and I ended up getting bed bugs. I should have defamation, because you could still see it on my face when I shave, like where they bit me.
No shit.
Yeah, it's not like a razor burn. It's like an irritation where they bit me on my face. You can see it. It's goofy. Yeah,
things to do for consultation.
It traumatized me. If you ever had bed bugs, you know what I'm talking about. I go places now, and I'll strip it.
Yeah.
Airbnbs, hotels, I'm lifting everything, ripping all the sheets off, looking.
You bring your own stuff? Or are you just looking? You're just
I'm just
checking?
picking up. Yeah,
I do the
picking
same
up
thing.
The
I look under
mattress.
sheets. I put sometimes my luggage in the bathroom just to get away.
I threw all my stuff away.
Yeah.
When I was there. And I went to REI and I bought waterproof bags and black trash bags and
in Sacramento when you were out there.
Kept all my stuff in the freezer. I didn't let the housekeeping people in my room. And I was out there for the 2-week deal. Yes. Right. So it was.
I know this is a little bit off track, but I have a good friend, a childhood friend, who went to D.C. for a wedding. I think it was his daughter's wedding, in fact, and he had a very similar situation at the hotel, bed bugs, visible, scarring type of an impact, and he's sued the hotel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if I would have known what I know now then, yeah.
I think he just got back from taking his family to Italy on that, but.
Wow.
It was a serious deal, you were describing. I
don't need to go to Italy. I just want a comma on my checking account.
Definitely, man. So you guys both end up in consultation, and you partner up, right? I mean, we always take a safety professional and an IH and put them together.
Yep.
Big D, Darwin and I were partners when I was at OSHA. You guys were partners, which is a really unique relationship when you get right down to it, because you're traveling together.
Yeah.
You're staying in a hotel. Well, not in hotels together, but you're... Right.
Yeah,
sharing different, you're at the same hotel. Maybe I should clarify.
Yeah, different rooms.
Different rooms, just for everyone out there.
If you can afford it.
Yeah, right.
By the end of the fiscal year, we were sharing rooms because we didn't have any money left.
But hot bucking it.
Yep.
Exactly. And you guys are working these inspections together. You get to know each other pretty well. You appear to be still friends.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
After that, so
100%.
Talk a little bit about consultation. I think most people are familiar with consultation. Just describe what consultation does, and then let's maybe talk about, from the inner circle, which I am not a part of, what consultation is really all about.
I think that consultation is, and the way that I pitch it to everybody, is the good OSHA, right? I mean, because
no doubt,
you do the same training, right? You come in, it's what I envisioned when I was in the private world, what OSHA should be.
Should
right?
be. Mm-hmm.
Come in, tell me what I need to do, what do I need to fix, how do I be better, without, I'm going to earmark that or write a citation for it. But they get, hey, I'm from the government, let me help you, right? Quote Jim Cover. So they get that negative connotation, right? And everybody gets scared. And then when you have to do your spiel, your opening conference, right? Their version, just so you're aware, if you don't abate, we're obligated to contact the government, right? The government being OSHA, right? Which
so that's always the threat, right? I mean, but that is always that threat that people are afraid of.
Yeah, they take it as a threat, right? And it's not. It's just us being transparent. We're obligated to say that, right?
If you refuse to correct these things that I find, if I do find anything,
I mean, because at the end of the day, they're safe. They are safety professionals, right? And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the end, what we want is everybody to be safe, everybody to go home, do all the safety things, right? So, but just part of that transparency process. I actually had a customer when I went through that piece, they shut me down. They didn't want me to do anything.
They didn't want you to proceed?
They got scared, yeah.
They just,
started
at the opening conference, they just shut it down.
Yep, they were all, they were in
that
their
freaked
chair,
them out.
all fidgety. Yeah, it was just
right.
And I tried to tell them, explained it as best I could, multiple different ways.
But I am not here to shut you down. I'm here to help you.
Yeah. Right.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And we'd point out to them that in the history of the program, we weren't privy to that ever happening. That never needed to happen with consultation, because we're invited into these places of employment. These are usually small to medium-sized employers, some mom and pop shops, right? And so we're just there to help their employees go home safely. And as far as I know, we never had to actually refer people to OSHA. Now, enforcement had shown up sometimes after our visits or thereafter. They're not correlated, but they get a call or an employee's disgruntled and they might come in. But what I loved about consultation is it was truly comprehensive. And so we would always tell the employers, I'll go where you want us to go. I'm not going to go snooping around in some corner or go in your maintenance shop, because that's where all the fun stuff is.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where all the fun
and that's where the OSHA guys gravitate to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
got to get my numbers.
But I can be here as long as you want me to be here, especially on the industrial hygiene side. If I'm going and doing some welding fume sampling, I'm going to be there 8 to 9 hours. I'm going to be there all day. And so if you want to have someone escort me or you just want to send me on my merry way, but I can walk around your entire facility and I can come up with 35 different hazards for you that you're not going to get cited on. So it's that second pair of eyes that's extremely comprehensive. I look through their safety and health programs. I'll look at their SDSs. I'll look at their emergency evacuation plans. I mean, I can literally look at the full gamut while I'm there, where sometimes enforcement goes in, solely focused, tunnel vision on one thing. Now, if they see something, they might open it up, right?
Maybe.
But I can give that comprehensive analysis while I'm there on site. That's what I loved about consultation.
Yeah, and they can shut it down at any point, right?
Yeah,
any point.
Hey, I see my list, and my list was obviously way shorter than theirs, right? They're 2 or 3 pages of notebooks. They're just scribbling away. They had the opportunity to, hey, I've had enough for today, right? We've seen enough. We've done enough. We've been, I don't want to go to that building because I know there's lots of problems. Whatever that looks like, they can, hey, we're good for now.
I'd never heard it described that way, but that's a great position for them to be in. You've given us some real insights. We are aware that we have some opportunities.
Yeah.
And maybe that's enough for now.
Right? Yeah. And
I love that.
It's the fresh set of eyes, right?
Yeah,
it's
no doubt. And the trained set of eyes, too. Let's be honest. I mean, you send somebody in to do a hazard assessment that doesn't know what a hazard is, you're not going to come out with much. And they certainly have no familiarity with the regs.
Right.
So to have somebody that had, and I always felt that your inspections were much more comprehensive than the OSHA inspections. Because the OSHA guys, and you alluded to this, I've got to get 2.8 violations per inspection.
Yeah.
And I know I don't want to come off like that was it, but I was being judged based on citations written, classification of citations, penalty amounts, whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I might not want to dig any deeper as I'm adding up these citations. I'm thinking to myself, this is a lot of writing I'm going to have to do, man. I think I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm sure that employer's done, but I think I'm done too. So I always found your reports much more comprehensive and thorough than ours, truthfully.
Yeah, they were cumbersome. They took some time. We had that Form 33, which I believe was a 58 questionnaire, overall assessment of their safety and health programs and management, administration. What's the culture? I mean, ask a lot of questions, and you can, again, put as much into that as you kind of want to get out. And some employers may never read that comprehensive Form 33, but I love that as an opportunity to really put in things. Sometimes I wouldn't tie something to a specific citation, right? I would say, okay, this isn't in keeping with 1910-1053, but, you know, maybe this is a 5A1 or something that OSHA could look at, and I might put that in that Form 33 just as a heads up. So I love that we had that opportunity to really provide that comprehensive report.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to stand up, right? When we,
when
we go to the informal.
Yeah, I mean, it's not,
right?
it doesn't have to be a legal document necessarily, but you're just giving them guidance, recommendations. And, you know, these are likely violations, and these are areas where you could improve. These are opportunities for best practice. I mean, I agree with you, man. When I went to OSHA, I thought that's how it worked. I'm going to come in there. I'm going to tell you these things that I think could be better. You're going to have a chance to fix them. And if you don't fix them, maybe I come back and then I issue citations. I didn't, particularly with small businesses.
Yeah.
I didn't love just pounding the crap out of them right from the jump, you know. Give them an opportunity. They probably didn't know. Not all of them. Some of them were intentional. But most of them didn't know better. And I think they would have corrected it given the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't know what they don't know.
They don't know. Yeah,
and
man.
They're they're small enough. They're running lean. All the above, right? They don't have a safety professional or somebody who even wears a safety hat,
right?
And
some poor bastard, some collateral duty guy that's he's a department manager, ops manager, and he's got to do this too. That is tough.
Generalist.
Yeah, I've seen the HR generalist who wears 6 different hats. Then they're tracking 300 logs, and they're actually trying to build a culture of safety while they're trying to hire people and train people. Like, good luck. It's not an impossible job. I've seen some amazing HR people do it, but it's difficult when you have full attention on safety. It's what it requires. You need a safety professional who goes and gets the certifications and the training and who's thinking safety all the time. Yeah.
What was the most interesting town you ever visited to get? I mean, to be honest, as a consultant or as an OSHA person, I'm from Nebraska. I don't know where you guys are from originally, but I saw parts of Nebraska that I would have never otherwise seen as an OSHA guy.
Yeah.
You know, did you visit any unique or interesting townships or?
Well, I think I'm just trying to think like what we did together and the way that consultation's broken up, right? There's dividing lines within the state, right? You get the eastern third and then the western 2/3, right? So there's
the North Platte guys took west.
Yeah.
Typically,
so for us, right? Like,
okay.
And then they historically had IHs out in that part of the world. So, but we went on a couple of visits, and I think the one furthest away when we accidentally turned off on a dirt road. We were getting some eyes out in the middle of
I'll bet.
northwestern Nebraska.
Yeah, we were near Scotts Bluff, going out towards Scotts Bluff, kind of that area.
You took a wrong turn and ended up in Scotts Bluff?
Well, statute of limitations. I was doing a little bit of public ground scouting in the Govey.
We were just out in that area, and I remember driving on this back road out in the country, and it's beautiful. It's really hilly, and I was like, are those bullet holes in that sign? And I was like, yep, those are bullet holes.
Yeah, maybe and you're driving a government vehicle?
Yeah. Yep, Anthony and I in the Govey, right?
Oh, dude.
Yep. So, yeah.
I know that.
And I remember out in Gothenburg, I stopped and got gas one time, and some gal at the gas station comes up to me, and she goes, government worker, you must be very, very important. And I go, look, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole here on OSHA Consultation, right? But people see that, you know, they don't quite know if they didn't work for the state or work for the federal government. They just assume that, you know, you have this great pension, you get paid well, you're a very important person, and it's like, well, when you actually work for the state, you kind of see the reality of
the feds as well.
Yeah,
man.
we might not get a raise this year, you know, depending on what the administration wants to do. So that's the nature of it in reality. But we visited a lot of interesting places. I went to Ohio often. That was a place I went a couple times. There's a feed yard down there, amazing people. But most people have never heard of Ohio. But
I have not.
Yeah, people from Ohio and Iowa form this little village. Ohio, Creighton, Nebraska, small town. That was a really interesting facility that I went to there. But yeah, we've been all over. I mean, I wish I could tally. I think there's, you know, I don't know how many, you know, cities, towns, villages, if there's over 400 or so in Nebraska. But I mean, honestly, I feel like I went to 250 or 300 of them.
I'll bet.
You know, in those 4 or 5 years.
I'll bet. So how long were you with the state?
I was 4.5 years.
About 4.5?
Something like that, yeah.
And you came in a little bit before, and how long were you there,
Just
Anthony?
about 4.5 years as well.
As well? So you stayed a little bit after Ezra left. Okay.
Yep.
And so who were your mentors? Who did you work with or that, you know, helped you? Just give me some names. I probably know them, but Who was there? You said Eldon was still the director at the time you started.
Yep.
And then our friend, all of our friends, Jim Cover,
Yep.
took that position at some point.
Shortly
there. Okay.
I was probably, because didn't you bump into him just briefly, or was he gone right before you came?
He was gone right before I came.
Okay.
So I only got the pleasure to interact with him a little bit.
Okay.
And then Anthony came and Jim rolled into that. So
Yeah,
Jim
good.
was super influential and, taking me on visits. Lauren.
Oh, yeah. Hirsch.
Yep.
Yep. I know Lauren.
Went on quite a
Absolutely.
few visits with Lauren. I went on some with Larry. He has since moved on. But Larry was out west, and then Josh, he's gone. He's been gone for a while, but he was the IH out in that part of the world.
Okay.
I went on a couple visits with him.
Josh.
Sherwood.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew Josh. Gravy was the guy out in North Butt. Eric
I've heard
Miller.
lots of stories
Big
about
Gravy.
both of those guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Lots of good stories.
Yeah. Gravy was out there when I was humping inspections for OSHA.
Nice.
We took a class together. We took the industrial hygiene chemistry class out in Salt Lake City together.
Nice.
Me, Gravy, and Phil Pasali. Do you know Phil Pasali? One of the IHs from Omaha, still there.
I know of Phil.
Great guy. Really, he's a
heard
chemist.
stories.
Really
Yeah.
bright, really capable IH, good guy. And Gravy sat in the back and snored at a decibel level that I had never. I had a sound level meter with me. It didn't even register that high. Gravy could tear up some
Threshold of hearing.
Yeah, man. I think I had to actually wear hearing protection in the class, but it was interesting. But we actually, so it's interesting. I mean, we knew each other, we interacted frequently, but there is a very distinct separation between the enforcement folks and the consultation folks, for good reason, right? I mean, there's really very little communication between the two organizations with regard to the inspection activities. Yeah. I know that if we would show up on site and they were engaged with you, if it was a programmed inspection, we would withdraw.
Yep.
Because they were entitled to work with consultation first and address any issues they might have. If it was unprogrammed, like a complaint or something, then we would typically still carry on go forward with it.
But we'd have to pack
and that was just a legal thing, But I've always been in favor of consultation. I wish everybody that was eligible would use consultation.
Yeah, highly underutilized service.
Underutilized. I get people's reservation in dealing with the government. I just sent a letter back to the IRS last week after, the IRS, once they send me letters every quarter. I'm just a one-man operation, and I get letters from them constantly.
Yeah.
And so I understand not wanting to work with the government necessarily. But this is a program that I just really think is underutilized. I wish people would use it more.
Yeah, your tax dollars are going towards it. And again,
absolutely.
Back to that
it comes in really competitively priced.
Right? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, especially for, safety
free
inspections, IH services.
Free $99.
Yeah.
I love it.
And we'd sample, whatever you want me to sample for.
Free.
For free, as Jim has pointed out, aluminum to zinc, if we're doing a welding sample. If you want me to sample for something specific, we can do that. We can order that. So it's, again, that comprehensive analysis that you might not get, or you might have something. Maybe you have some lead in your metal. Maybe you have isocyanates or something that you don't realize that you have. So we come in there and we capture that, as opposed to enforcement coming in and finding it. And you're like, oh, crap, I didn't realize I had isos in that paint thinner or something. So
right. Now let's clarify that. We is them, because you guys are no longer with consultation.
Correct.
You actually charge for your services now.
Right.
Everything's for sale now, yeah.
And you have earned that right.
Sure.
No more free 99.
Yeah, no more free 99,
right. They are still free 99.
But they are still free.
Yeah. And then when we look at the regulations, right, that's one aspect of it. What do we have to do as an employer? Well, are my employees exposed to noise? I don't know. How do you tell? You got to sample.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you got to sample.
Do I need respiratory protection? How do you know? Got to sample.
Right.
Have you ever done it? Most people, probably not.
Probably
right?
Not.
So you have to do that for what the government tells you to do, right? But you should want to do that as an employer.
No doubt.
Right? To protect your
know.
employees
you
and
just
take care of them and have a nice place for folks to come to work, right? So, there's both sides of that coin.
Yeah.
Right? There's the compliance side, and then there's the keeping my people safe side.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So, and you achieve, you get heads and tails, right, with those folks. So,
are there? It is really unique, and you guys both have had this experience. 4 years with consultation. It's unique to have the opportunity to see so many different operations. Most safety people will typically be with 1 or 2 facilities in their lifetime, maybe. They might be a construction company, that might be an industrial site or something. But we have had the incredible good fortune of seeing lots of different programs. And so you get a much better understanding of what works and what doesn't work. Are there any common threads that you can think of, like companies that had high-performing safety programs or companies that had disastrous? What were the common threads, good or bad? Are there things that you could point to that the listeners could take away that this is really what helps? Or I've seen this, and it doesn't have to be systemic. It could be one little thing, but they did this and that was great.
We got quite a few examples, but what comes to mind is just standardization. I mean, in that culture of safety. So there's facilities that had standardized their safety and health program across the board. And so they had a well-established safety committee that met every month. They had representatives that would go back from those safety committee meetings and dispense that to the employees. Everywhere you turned, there was conversations or signs. One place, actually, on their forklifts, they had it connected electronically to a safety system where all of their forklift inspections that they did every shift was automatically loaded up to the computer in the cloud. And so they could easily access those type of things, as opposed to having the maintenance guy rely on him every month to go around and check the IWAS stations and fire extinguishers. They had the operating system built into some of their machinery. I think that was excellent. So it goes back to that standardization across the board and holding people accountable. But yeah, there's plenty of examples of that.
I like that, yeah.
I think, trying to have that difference between ops and safety, right? Because they butt heads. So I think that buy-in from the top and the push down, like, hey, we're going to do this, and this is why we're going to do it, and everybody being on the same sheet of music, I think is one thing that I've seen, place over place, right? Whether they got the nice shiny manual or not, everybody's kind of on board with, oh yeah, we're doing this, and some places they don't know the why. They're just, it is,
right.
It's that way.
But that is from the top down. That ultimately.
Yep. Hey, we're going to do these things, right? We're going to perform the inspections. We're going to meet with the safety committee. We're going to at least talk about the stuff, and the employees are more apt to, hey, there's a problem here. Hey, this tool is broken. Hey, X, right? So they can get it fixed.
They're gonna bring that forward. They're gonna tell someone rather than just endure it or modify it.
And everybody can print off that shiny safety manual, but actually implementation of it is what's important. How do you translate that into practice? Which is what's so important. And I saw glaring examples of where that was not the case. There was a place out west that I will not name that I went out for, and I heard shortly thereafter that the safety professional and upper management didn't really want us back. It probably was because they had to install some expensive safety equipment that was lacking. So, for example, they had a mixing room connected to their paint booth. Well, there was no ventilation in there. The water suppression in the paint booth and the mixing room was not connected at all. It was just sitting there in the middle of the facility. There was a place where they were working with isocyanates. Guys weren't wearing respirators. They had no idea what they were working with. There wasn't readily accessible fire extinguishers, no showers. It was just it was glaring, and it was clear that upper management, they had made a comment about the cost of safety and how much that we have to invest for these things. And it's like, well, you're going to pay for it on the back end, whether it's your mod rates or disability or just losing these employees who can no longer paint. And they didn't invite us back, and so that's really unfortunate. And that's the alternative side of the coin when we talk about safety and health.
Yeah, it can get. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, but if you know it and you're blatantly like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to hook the water up to something like that.
Yeah. Too expensive was never well received, at least in my experience.
Safety is so expensive. Well, it's not really.
It's not really.
Yeah, and when you hear, it was never fun. There was only once or twice where I actually had to, and essentially tell someone that they need a paint booth, right? And you're talking, $40,000, $50,000, depending on the size of the paint booth. Could be less, could be more. And that's never a fun conversation to have with an employer. But at the same time, you need to protect your employees. You're in this business. I understand you have a bottom line, but at the end of the day, these are individuals with families, and they're your workers, and so you should care about their overall well-being.
Yeah, without them, you're not going to make any money.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And at least with consultation, you're in a position where you don't have to be adversarial necessarily. You're just trying to lead them to the water, right? Okay. Yeah. You need this. I know the threat exists. Like, if you do not make any modifications or you don't correct some of these serious hazards, the potential to refer to OSHA exists. And you said you came close a couple of times, but ultimately, ultimately they just need to acknowledge that they've made these corrections. I mean, I don't know if you guys did follow-ups. OSHA does very few follow-ups, and I'm not suggesting anybody lie.
Sure.
That's not my point, but, make some corrections. I mean, to say, screw you, we're not doing it, is not a great strategy.
Not at all. And they'd usually send us back the report, the final report with all the necessary abatements that they did. Sometimes employers will include pictures of what they fixed, which is awesome to see it. They're really involved. Those are the ones that have great safety programs. So when they're doing the walkthrough with us, they're taking pictures as well on their end of things. We write these up and don't always take pictures, usually for proprietary reasons and stuff, but they can take pictures, and then when they abate them, they send us the before and after. So that's awesome. But sometimes we would, get reoccurring customers, right? So we would come back every single year because they really liked what they got out of us. And when we're there that next time, we can kind of say, oh, look, you got that fixed. That's awesome. That's excellent. So we wouldn't actually go back out and vet whether or not they implemented those changes. It was kind of on good faith. But sometimes if we'd go back, we could see whether or not. And then our sharps, we'd see our sharps every year.
Not necessarily a follow-up, but, a reoccurring visit. You're like, oh, yeah, they didn't fix that, and they said they fixed that, right? Or vice versa. Yeah. So,
you encourage them again. Come on, let's keep.
Yeah,
we can do it. We can do it.
Yep. And if you forget or not, you can go back into the system and look. Yeah. Oh yeah, I wrote that up last year.
Keep going forward, man.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Exactly.
And I get, as a realist in safety, I understand that the same problem can occur or reoccur, or safety is a snapshot in time, all the things, right? But a lot of that stuff you can tell, like, oh yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
Right. That never got done.
Never changed.
Just as simple as your compressor tips or your worm-driven hose-style clamps. On your compressed air, all those little things that we pick up on, and then we come back and it's still there because it's a quick fix or it's easier. Upper management doesn't want to invest in good compressor tips, right? That don't dead end. And so it's those reoccurring things that we just say, hey, like this is where you got to build it in the culture, and it's got to come not only from the bottom up, but the top down.
Yeah. Well, we've been kind of dancing around this the whole time, but the whole point of this session was really to talk about Cover and tell stories about Jim. And first of all, let's clarify, we love Jim.
100%.
Great guy.
Great
almost
guy.
Almost talk to him multiple times a week.
I still talk to him fairly often. Yeah, we'll stay in touch. And like I said, when Cover told me that he wanted to help sponsor the podcast, I was blown away. For one thing, I didn't know that was even possible. But they have a little bit of a marketing budget, and so we've done what we could to really promote consultation. I'm a true believer. And so we love Jim. But that being said, what can you tell me about Jim Cover?
Well, I didn't really answer the question about my mentor, I don't believe.
Oh, yeah, please, go ahead.
As the industrial hygienist, Jim was my, not only my mentor, my direct report as manager. Chris Cantrell at the time, who was the former fire marshal and also the director of safety, oversaw Jim. So I learned a little bit from him as well, but his is more on boilers and stuff. That's his background and working on ships. But Jim, to start off, let's just say, he's got so much practical knowledge, so I want to build him up first before I tear him down.
But that's decent.
Yes, but that's what I valued so much about his just overall practical knowledge of everything. Like it could be just the way injection molding works, or the difference between a needle valve and a solenoid valve, and all these things that you don't learn in school, right? You just learn from working on a farm.
He doesn't forget anything.
No, he doesn't. His memory is insane when it comes to
stories that he tells. I'm going to start a podcast someday. Good. And Jim's going to be on it all the time. Yeah. So I can get all of his stories. He doesn't forget anything.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he has so many good.
That's awesome.
Just, being at the in the program for 20 years, he had so many examples of things that he saw or things to keep an eye on. I think it was on the podcast last time. I talked about anti-spatter, right? That welders use. And that was just something subtle that, from knowing welding from the 80s and 90s where people were still using this anti-spatter that was pretty nasty stuff. So to keep an eye out for those things when you're out in an old place like in Creighton and you go around the corner and you see, maybe you see leaded paint or you see something like that. Like those are the historical things that he has the context that I didn't have. So that was awesome. Alternatively, this is what I love this part about him is the storytelling. And my very first job on the road, we're outside Lincoln, and I think we're heading slightly southwest, and 45 minutes into this drive, it's my very first job, and next thing I know, we're talking about the Great Pyramids and ancient aliens, and it was just a fun conversation because I'm extremely open-minded. I'm extremely humble. It echoes back to Socrates. The only thing I know is that I know nothing, and I really I try to embody that and be very humble. So I'm always willing to learn. You know, I have some strong convictions, but they're really loosely held. And so when given new information, new data, I'm always willing to update my priors. And so that leaves me really open-minded. But then sometimes we go down rabbit holes talking about, you know, aliens or pyramids. And but he entertains those things too. He likes just thinking outside the box and not.
I think he's curious. I think he's intellectually curious. He's always trying to learn something, which I appreciate.
I appreciate too. I really value conversation and independent thinkers. You know, not being just told from the top down exactly, kind of alternative to the safety conversations earlier, but being able to like be empowered to think for yourself and think outside the box and quote unquote do your own research a little bit. I think is really important. I mean, that's empowerment and that's intellectual curiosity. And he really embodied that.
He does research, right?
He does.
He'll do homework on it. It's just not, you know, one thing that pops in his algorithm, and that's the gospel, right?
Yeah,
Look it up and read articles and run. He runs down a rabbit hole before he takes you with him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
No doubt.
I love that about
Yeah,
him.
we've had some curious conversations because he's interested in things that I'm not particularly, those are not things that I typically pursue. And so we'll have these conversations and all of a sudden we'll be talking about something.
Yeah.
You know, there were people that lived here that did this, you know, 1,000 years ago that, you know, that created this. I have no idea, man. I feel like I'm so poorly informed.
Yeah.
When we talk, you know, we have those conversations all the time too.
Yeah.
I know Pasali and Cover and I used to have those conversations, and Phil, also an incredible intellect, but he's also a little bit of a poke the bear kind of guy. You know, he kind of likes to initiate.
Dabble in conspiracy.
Yeah, he does, man. He'll poke a little bit.
I like that too.
And so we always had really fun conversations.
So much fun. Like,
But Cover used to get himself in trouble with the OSHA people all the time. I can remember, you know,
well, I think you guys share a mutual friend.
we do have a mutual friend, yes.
That
And
didn't care for Cover. Is that
well, I think she questions sometimes some of Jim's positions.
Sure.
Now, I have to admit that Jim and I shared common positions more often than not. I typically agreed with him, you know, and we won't get into the great detail about this particular situation, but, you know, one of the expectations OSHA has is that you will utilize all feasible engineering and administrative controls in order to, control these, you know, hazards, airborne hazards or noise or whatever that might be, these different agents.
Yeah.
Utilize those steps first. And then if you cannot control them to an adequate level with those controls, then we put in PPE, maybe respirators in particular, you know, because respirators are rarely intended to be a permanent solution.
No.
You know,
you're referring to hierarchy of controls, right?
I am referring to that exactly.
So
you know,
on the same page.
but you know, feasible controls.
Yes.
So what is recognized and commonly used, as I understand, feasibility. So there were some arguments over that, and they were healthy arguments.
Yeah.
You know, they were generally reasonable arguments. You know, is that enough? Have they done enough to put people in respirator? Those kind of things. You know, you know, we would have had a lot of those kind of discussions, and I learned a lot from just having the discussions.
I think we can learn a lot from dialogue in general.
Absolutely, you know, just
each other.
Perspectives that I hadn't really considered, you know, and so
you got to look at it through a different lens.
You really do.
If you only lived your life with your lens, like
you would be really
very ignorant,
poorly informed.
Yeah,
no doubt. And so you travel with Cover.
Yep.
You travel with Cover.
I'll never forget this one. And we all know Cover, right? I mean, he's a bigger man, and so I'm bombing up to this place up in northeast Nebraska with Jim, and he's big, and I'm with him because I'm, you know, just hanging out, and we show up to this spot, and, you know, he's an IH, so we're there early morning, you know, right away. Well, at this place, instead of bringing everybody to Jim and him hooking them up and then cutting them loose, he was going to everybody.
Oh, that's tough.
It's hard.
And, you know, a lot of the workers were ESL guys, and Jim's big, and he's got his ID badge on his pocket. I'll never forget. So as soon as they saw that, and they were starting to do math in their head, and then all of a sudden it just kind of it went a little bit south. Everybody kind of shut up and got a little bit more reserved, and they thought he was somebody who he wasn't.
Yeah,
of course. That was. He does have that kind of an air about him, though.
Yeah. So from that day,
he could have been an old county sheriff or something.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
I could see him.
Except then when you talk to him, you know, he's, you know, soft as a teddy bear in terms of just his kindness,
no doubt,
open-mindedness, and helping people. But when you see a 6 foot plus guy coming at you with a badge and looking very official. It can be a
he's
little
6 foot plus.
Yeah, he's a tall guy.
I give him 6'3", about 3 bills maybe. Man, I don't know the details, but
about right.
Yeah. So from that day forward, I never had my badge on me. It was always
that's why I refused to drive a government vehicle. We had one government vehicle at the OSHA office, I think, and someone every week had to drive it. The expectation was that it would be used. And so if you were a senior person, so when I was a senior person, I wouldn't drive it. I'd make the new guy drive it, because the minute you pull into town, the communication network is buzzing. There's a government guy in town, you know, and I hated showing up and they would say, "We've been expecting you." And I'm like, how did you know I was coming?
Yeah.
Well, because I stopped at the gas station on the outside of town, and then everybody knew.
Yeah, it's like the movies, right?
It's just like the movies.
Walk back out of the car,
everybody knows. It freaked me out.
Exactly. We don't like your kind around here, kind of thing. But well, we had to be conscious of that because a lot of times in these small towns, there's not a ton of places to eat, right? And so a lot of times it's mom and pop diners or the local bar.
Oh yeah.
And so often we'd go grab lunch at a bar during our lunch hour. Oh, yeah. But I'm like, I probably shouldn't park the state vehicle in front of a bar. So those are just things that you have to take into consideration when you're representative of the state,
No doubt.
Respect that.
Yeah, you have to be kind of cautious about that.
Yeah.
And I can remember we were told if you could drive the government vehicle, or if you were told to drive the government vehicle to the job site and then back to the hotel at the end of the day if you were out of town. But then we were always told you couldn't drive it then again to like a bar or something, even if you weren't drinking. Yeah, you'd have to walk somewhere or something.
The expectation was go eat at a non-bar, right?
Yeah, drive through some shitty fast food place or whatever and bring it back to the hotel or whatever. Yeah. And if you were an IH, your room was always, I can remember having my room full of pumps and stuff, charging stuff up for the next day.
Yep.
And I remember having, at one situation in a small, like the local police knocking on my hotel door because the housekeeping person had seen these things. They're kind of in there running and charging and stuff, and had called somebody, and they came and checked out what I was doing.
I'm surprised that never happened to me because I always felt that too. I'm walking up to a hotel and I got
these boxes,
big cases full of shit.
I'm barreling in with my Pelican cases, and
man,
bomb us or something. So luckily, no one ever called the police on me.
But
well, that you know of, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
and I mean,
they could have.
We had to bring. I mean, when I would fly somewhere, I got sent a few places where I had to fly. And I would bring that stuff with me, and the TSA didn't like it. They'd be like, "What the hell is this?" They didn't like it, man. I don't blame them. It's a little bit unusual.
Like they're intrinsically safe. It's all right.
That's right.
Yeah, they know what that means.
Yeah, right.
Right. Exactly. Well, Cover is a funny guy, man, and I know that you guys both learned tons from him. I've learned tons from him. I mean, we're not here to it's not a memorial for Cover or anything.
No, he's still alive and well, folks.
He's still kicking.
Still doing well,
Still running the program.
402-471-4717. Give him a call.
Give him a call. He would love to hear from you. And he's not an old dude. He's probably got a few years left, I would imagine. He's in his 50s or something.
He's still got.
Maybe that's a HIPAA violation to say that he's in his 50s.
Right. But he's still got a young man in the house. So
he does. He's still got a few years left
on the block yet.
So he'll be there. Give him a call.
Give him a call. And maybe last time I was on the podcast, we talked a little bit about the pilot program. Last time I saw Jim a few weeks ago, and I didn't mention it, but this was a very successful program towards the end of my time there. That's when we were heading out west and saw the bullet holes in the sign because someone lopped off their finger. But OSHA referred them to us. So if there was an amputation, loss of an eye, or hospitalization, OSHA had the opportunity to refer to consultation for us to go out there and figure out how they could have prevented that situation.
So if that employer would agree to that,
yes,
then because you did that one for one of my clients,
yep.
I can remember that. It was close to the end of your tenure with the state.
Yeah, it's close to the end.
But that pilot program was offered to one of my clients that had an amputation.
Yep.
And you guys went out there and performed it. I thought it was great. They loved it.
Yeah.
I thought it was an appropriate opportunity for them. They were a good company that had an unfortunate incident.
Yep.
And I thought that was fantastic.
I think that's how, in an ideal world, right? This utopian world, that's how it should go. We should give people an opportunity to make a difference and change the culture before we go in there and pound them with enforcement activities. Yeah. Now, if it's a willing violation and we drive and see every day these guys are framing and they're up on rooftops, never tied off, and so I mean, eventually
leg straps aren't even hooked up.
Not at all. You got to go in and you got to correct that, or someone's going to die. So I'm all for that. But if it's a smaller incident, quote unquote, and you're able to get in there and give them that full comprehensive consultation, look at where their deficits are in their safety and health program, and then if they still aren't making those changes, or there's another injury, then it's okay. Yeah, I get it. Enforcement goes in. But that pilot program I think was very successful. I did at least 12 to 15 of those. At the end of my tenure with consultation.
Yeah, very good.
And so I hope that's still going, because it was a regional pilot program. I think Region 7 was doing it.
I believe it is.
I hope to see that go through all regions, because it was an excellent. It not only gave us more work, because we were always looking for work, but again, it gave us an opportunity to get in there and be a little more proactive. Although an injury happened, we can work with them to prevent one from happening again.
Right. When you guys were working together, who did most of the talking?
Well,
did you share
we tried to share.
Yeah.
Share because I remember when Big D and I were working together, we would go into a facility, and the opening conference would consist of this. Big D would say, "We're here to make an inspection." And he'd throw some piece of paper on the table, and they would stare at us in fear, and then I would explain why we were there.
Good guy, bad guy.
And it wasn't intentional. That was just how it worked out.
Sure.
The Big D was a man of few words, you know. He just wanted to get out into the shop and do the inspection.
Yeah.
Sure wasn't a big opening conference kind of guy.
He was not a huge and Chester Young, who was one of the safety people when I first started. Chester would walk in when I would accompany Chester. He would walk in and say, "I'm with OSHA," and he would walk right back into the shop. That was the opening conference.
Wow.
And I was like, that's not quite what we talked about up at OTI, but I guess that's pretty efficient, Wow. It was interesting how...
Don't do that for me.
Oh, no, man, not anymore. No, I think Chester was one of the original OSHA guys, so he was very old school, probably from the 70s.
The early 70s,
and so...
December, 28, 1970? Is that?
Right. Yeah, and imagine doing, OSHA work then, OSHA comes 1970.
Oh, my gosh.
A year or two thereafter, supposedly we landed on the moon, we're talking...
Right, now this brand new organization...
I love how you said that, supposedly landed on the
moon. Right? There's people that don't believe it.
I dabble in conspiracy
there's people that don't believe it. But, Cold War and with Vietnam and all, you just imagine the times then, and then when industry was in its glory days, right? My grandfather was a toolmaker and machinist, they were going full bore, and that was American made. That was the time, I would say, the golden age for industry, but also it was the golden age for injuries. And so I know people who were working in lead smelting facilities who didn't even make it to the 1980s, right? I've heard those stories, and so it was needed. We need some enforcement. We need some regulation so people aren't just dumping.
Yeah, it was a little out of balance at that time.
Yes, dumping atrazine back in the river over there. So it's important. But imagine doing work then, and if we think it's confrontational sometimes now, imagine back then. So people who went through that probably have a different perspective.
I know my father worked in a factory. My dad, started off as a forklift operator at Western Electric, which was a huge cable plant here, and worked for the telephone company.
Yeah, that's why
they made phone cable.
Yeah,
and my dad started out there on the loading dock and worked he was probably there for almost 40 years, I would imagine. And I can remember one time I was in high school in the 70s. Were you guys weren't in high school in the 70s, probably.
No.
And
not yet.
My dad comes home from work at Western Electric, and he just goes, "Goddamn OSHA stuff." And it was probably 74 or something. And he had been assigned some responsibilities for this new stuff, this regulatory stuff that they called OSHA.
Wow.
And I could tell he was like, as if I don't have enough to do already. And they'd given him some, responsibilities. And I can remember telling him, "I got a job with OSHA," years later.
Yeah.
And that look on his face, like, he traded.
I didn't raise you right.
Yeah, what happened to you?
Yeah.
No, man, that was funny. But you're right. It was kind of an interesting time. And I'm sure that the compliance officers then ran into a lot of, "You're going to do what?" Well, I'm here to make sure that you're following the rules. What rules? There's no rules. Oh, man, no. Yeah, turn your ass around and get the hell out.
And we see that, fast forward a little bit, during consultation and even now in some consulting, I keep coming back to that culture, and it's not to be an ageist. It varies. I saw some 65-year-old guys who are really engaged with the safety program and safety committee, but on average, looking at kind of the normal distribution, what I would find is that towards left end of the tail, the kind of younger kids were usually more involved with the safety. They'd ask me more of the questions. They'd be more interested.
They want to know the why.
They want to know the why. What is this going to do to me? What is metal fume fever? Is this going to impact me for the rest of my life? I feel kind of better on Sundays, but then on Friday I feel worse, right? They'd be more interested and be willing to actually maybe wear a PAP or wear a powered air purifying welding helmet versus a guy who is 66, he's been smoking, been welding for 50 years. He's like, I don't give a shit. Like
man.
The ship sailed. And
I got stuff to do.
Yeah,
Get out
so
of my
getting
way.
to those guys, I still would try. I still, am interested. Like I think about not just lifespan, but health span, and thinking like, okay, you may only have 15 years left, and do you want to hang out with your great grandkids? Do you want to be able to walk or breathe?
You got to drag that oxygen cylinder around with you all the
Exactly.
time.
That's
and
not
so,
living, right?
you can always turn it around. I mean, yeah, if you have severe COPD and there's some things that are irreversible, but it's still an opportunity to educate or help or assist in the way I can, just because I care about people. But seeing that shift, I think that has occurred in a lot of industries. There's been that shift.
Yeah,
of like,
I would agree.
I don't want to lose my fingers. I want to be able to go home to my kids.
And I think younger people, I think there is hopefully that curiosity. We used to just do what we were told back in the day, and now maybe there is a need for a little bit more explanation or understanding about some of these things. I hope so. I mean, I have two sons. They're in their 20s, and I still I'm curious about their work activities. When they were doing summer jobs and part-time jobs, I would usually go pay a visit. This is my dad, the former OSHA guy, and they would all go, "Oh God,"
Yeah.
But I mean, having some understanding of what they're confronted with out in the workplace is almost a burden, man. Because I know we all know what workplaces can be, what they should be, and what they often are.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't want my children they're men. I shouldn't say children, but I don't want my sons exposed unnecessarily to shit.
I'm sure you saw things that we didn't see. Because again, we didn't respond to fatalities.
Right.
So I'm sure you experienced things.
Did you know Bill Hetzler and Art Davis?
Sounds
The
familiar.
With the state, they probably preceded you, but they ran the FACE program.
Oh yeah.
So they were the ones that kind of accompanied us at times to do those.
Was it 757 program?
Well, they were the ones that did that fatality assessment program, and they would go out and review fatalities. Sometimes with OSHA, they would accompany us sometimes, and then they would post that. The former area director Jeff Funk, who was the area director probably when you guys were around.
Yeah,
with
I think
OSHA.
he works for NIOSH now, right?
He's with NIOSH, and he runs that FACE program now out of where he's out in Morgantown, West Virginia, I believe.
Nice.
Interesting program. So I know that was kind of a small select group of people with consultation that did that, but it was an interesting program, a useful program.
Yeah, and if you witness those, I during my times in OTI at Arlington Heights, I'd speak to some enforcement officers, and some of the stories that they had of walking in, they're showing up after this incident just happened. Someone fell through a skylight, or someone, lost their head. Those type of stories. I never forget a forklift one where, a guy was at the dock, forklift, it wasn't chalked, it was on, someone wasn't in it, just started going and just decapitated them. And so responding to that and seeing that firsthand, not only having to deal with that, and EMS responders, Marines like Ezra, people in the hospital see these things all the time, but if you're not used to that, but you think about that could be my son, that could be my daughter.
Without question.
It terrifies me.
Yeah.
It terrifies me
and
too.
You've seen
man.
it. So when your kid comes home when he's 18 is like, Dad, I'm gonna go roofing. It's like,
no,
all
you're
right,
not,
well,
I know.
Here's your fall pro at least. So.
Interesting. Yeah, I've offered my company to both my sons, and they're both like, "Are you kidding me? You don't want to be a safety guy? Are you kidding? Come on, man.
They have no interest.
No interest. Well, what are you doing now, man? Tell everybody what you're doing now.
So I'm doing real similar to the consultation program.
Yes.
Right? A little, here and there, there's some differences, but I'm still working for the insurance brokerage. So I do all my services, value add to our customers, folks that we work for.
Yeah.
It
is consultation ultimately, just with a different group.
Yep. And then I do, deconflict the airspace with the government and do that. I do a lot of trainings. I've recently been pushing Stop the Bleed, CPR.
I love that, man. I've been watching your posts on LinkedIn. You post a lot, and there's a lot of great information there. Thank you for doing
appreciate
that.
Appreciate that. It's a life skill to me, right? And it goes back to, you're kind of talking about your sons. Well, I got two sons and a little girl, right? So that stuff's super important to me, and I feel that everybody should be that one way, shape, or form.
They should have that training. They should have that knowledge.
And I get, there people are going to fight, people are going to flight, and people are going to freeze. But at least for those folks, if they've sat through a class, they've done the stuff.
Classes are great too. The Stop the Bleed.
And we've talked before, right?
It's great stuff.
Some of that's instructor pendant, right? So experiences may vary. But it's super important that people, they'll step up to the plate when it matters for those folks.
I kind of wish, I don't love anything being mandatory, but man, that's really something. First aid, CPR, AED use, stop the bleed.
Well, you should want to.
Everybody should want to have that training. I'm pushing it really hard. I want everybody to get that training. I think it's critically important. And just like you said, man, if you have anybody out there that you care about and you don't get to spend 24 hours a day with them, somebody else might have to step up at some point and provide that kind of assistance. And we want them to be able to do that.
And
ultimately,
accidents and incidents, I mean, that's like the nature of human existence.
Car accidents, I mean, it doesn't have to be some kind of active, intentional violence.
Yeah, there's 35,000.
The choking thing.
Yeah.
The kids, are you familiar with that device?
I have a Life Vac. So there's a couple competitors out there. There's Life Vac and then there's D-Choker. Those are the two big ones that I know about.
Life Vac is the one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so D-Choker looks really similar, but it's got an actual, it looks like a nasal, I can't ever say that word, pharyngeal. It doesn't matter. Yeah, but that it goes down into their throat. But the Life Vac's just like a bag valve mask. Put it over their face, get a good seal, and then you basically turn it into a plunger, one-way valve in there, and it pulls it out. Guy at my church used it. He's used his twice.
No kidding.
Yeah, on big people, not little kids, but they make both. So I got one at home.
They make a child-sized one and an adult-sized one.
I got one at home, and I got one in my wife's car. I need to buy a couple more, so I got them everywhere. But
good for you.
Couple hundred.
Well, my brother Dave has 2 grandchildren that they watch periodically. My great nephew Jack and the newest addition Penny. And I said, you need to have these, man.
Yeah.
What would you do if one of your grandchildren was choking and you didn't have this?
Yes.
And I've never seen it used, but he bought them.
I've been in that scenario with my nephew, so I might have a little PTSD. My wife might accuse me early on of chopping the kids' foods up too early, and there's actually a whole body of research now. We did with my daughter, so we learned with my son. With my daughter, at a young age, we were just handing her full steaks and food. There's that lead kind of weaning type eating that people do where you just give them full chunks of food, and then ultimately they just figure it out. You don't need to chop everything up microscopically like I did with my son, but it stemmed from a couple incidents with my nephew. I used to watch my niece and nephew a lot, and there was a specific incident with the peanut butter sandwich on good old Wonder White bread, and then a situation with, I think it was a piece of steak, and so I was able to get those out successfully. But if I had a device like that Vac or the choker,
did you have to Heimlich them or something, or did you?
I was able to scoop what you're not supposed to do, right?
You're not supposed to shove it down in there.
I was, 20 years old, and my nephew, 5 years old, is choking, and so I have those experiences that are just. They're frightening, and whether we evolved this way or created this way, it's kind of a faulty design to have these 2 tubes and have it so small, right? And you can choke in something as small as a pill. And so I don't know the statistics on choking incidents every year. I know a lot of other statistics, but that one, it's so common and so frequent. And so being prepared at your home, whether you have a fire blanket, fire extinguisher, a de-choker, first aid kit, those things you should just always have. I always have a first aid kit in the back of my car. You never know.
Yeah, so, I just gave mine away. I had a kit, and one of my buddies was driving across country. A guy that used to be a roommate of mine back in Ohio. He was driving cross country, stopped in and visited for a few days, and he was going on some rafting trip or something up in Idaho. And I was like, "Do you have a first aid kit?" "No, man." So I gave him mine. So I have to replace it. But everybody should carry that stuff.
Another rabbit hole for me is first aid kits.
The quality of them. And types
I'm a big advocate for that stuff, right? And the ones that you buy.
No good.
No good.
You make your own then?
I make my own, and I've bought all of them, right? I bought the one from the box stores. I bought one from the, the distributors to the, the guys who work construction. I bought I got 3 or 4 different ones that are made. And there's like 1 or 2 things in there that
are useful.
But other than that, like they don't have a real tourniquet in there. They don't have gauze in there. They don't have pads. Like 2 4x4s and 1 2-inch roller gauze. Like, what are you gonna do with that?
Yeah, man, not much.
And the scissors that come in those things. I mean, those are for kids, right? To cut pictures out. Build your own, right?
Yeah.
I've got a couple that I've built.
Do you have a list of things that you recommend for people that build their own, or could you provide something?
I can put something together. Yeah,
that would be actually pretty useful.
Get that in the show notes, maybe.
Love that. That would be a great.
Yeah, I think it's
because I started building my own stuff too, man, just because of that same reason. I just thought the quality of the crap and the over-the-counter kits are pretty weak.
some of them have, a good start, whether you buy a kit that's got all the MOLLE on it because it's outdoorsy and it's cool. And some of them have the compartments with the names on them, and, just the stuff in them's trash, right? I just did a Stop the Bleed for one of our customers, and they're like, here's our kit, right? How can we make it better? So I looked at it and I'm like, well, I opened up the tourniquet, right? Because that's part of the deal. You don't want it in the plastic. Yeah. So I looked at it, and guess what? It's not. It's not TCCC, right? It's not a Cat 7. Yeah. So I'm like, this thing's a toy, right? Use it for training.
Yeah.
Right.
So, some of those are good starters, right? I just bought the Milwaukee Pack Out one, big Pack Out geek. If you follow me on the internet, you know that I got all this stuff. So I bought it, one, because I wanted it, but one, I wanted to see what was in it. And, it's a great vessel, right? It's a great piece to have because lots of guys have those on the work sites. You can put it in your car. You can do lots of stuff with it, but the contents of it are not good. So the foundation of that is the box itself. And then after that, honestly, I would dump everything out except the eye wash bottles in there and then start over. But yeah, I can get a list.
I'd love to see that, man. What you recommend? I have just gone online and bought a bunch of stuff. I bought tourniquets online because of that same recommendation. I think someone told me if you're getting a tourniquet for under $30, it's probably a piece of shit.
Yeah.
It's fake.
And the wound pack, some of the coagulant, I bought some of the coagulant that has a shelf life apparently, so you can't just keep that indefinitely.
Sure.
But yeah, man, I maybe it's a curse being in this profession because you just see I see hazards everywhere.
That lens on all the
time.
My
wife is always posting, when you married a safety and health guy, because we went on a trip recently and coffee pots unplugged. The thing that gets me every day, like literally this morning, right? Curling irons and straighteners, I kind of smelled something. It was just kind of thrown in the sink, still plugged in. This is a makeup sink, right? And there's makeup bags, and it's touching the makeup bag, and slightly, it's still so hot to the touch. Just leaves it plugged in. And so those are the things that you just can't avoid as a safety and health person. Man. Like we had an incident with a candle too about 5 years ago, and so I am a little anti-candle in the house. Yeah, sure, they smell great, whatever, but I also want to have my home tomorrow. So,
no doubt.
And with the recent tornadoes, you just never know, right? So
you don't.
I don't
That's
think
a great example.
You can't ever be too prepared. I don't think.
I would agree, and I think everyone should be better prepared. Most people are not prepared.
Exactly.
No, this stuff's flying off the shelves now after what happened in Elkhorn, right?
Yeah.
People are hopefully, right, they're building a tote or a bag to have, if they live in this part of the world, so they can take it with them to the basement or they can,
no doubt.
They have that stuff. Businesses have first aid kits. Great if there's the right stuff in them, which usually not. And even if it's stocked, right? Yeah. It's never the right stuff. But what is it? They screw it to the wall.
Yep.
You can't rip that off and take it to the scene and this dude just cut his arm off or got his hand pinched in something. Like, it's stuck on the wall. What are you going to do?
I know, man.
So just to, we can always be better.
Yes.
Well, we should talk more about that, actually, on another session because we're running out of time. We've rolled up on our hour, but I think that would be a great conversation, preparedness. We talk a lot about preparedness on this podcast with different people, but I think that's probably a topic that we can't visit often enough because it's critical and most people are not well prepared. So let's save that for another time.
Excellent.
We didn't get to hear what you're doing. Give me the elevator version of what you're doing now.
The regular people version.
So academia still kind of sucked me back in a little bit. Okay. So I went and was a clinical epidemiologist and infection preventionist at the hospital for about a year.
Okay.
Then the college called me up and wanted me to help oversee their doctoral and public health program. So that's what I do now. I'm also a doctoral and public health student with a focus in epidemiology. So I'm writing my dissertation now, but it intersects with industrial hygiene because I worked with Nebraska long-term care facilities on a large grant to fit test as many employees as possible over the last 2 years. And all Nebraska long-term care facilities, there's 476. So get them fitted for N95s in the event of, another pandemic or just an outbreak of tuberculosis or flu. So I still am dabbling in that. I'm also going to sit for my CH next year. And then I also do consultation work as well.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I still passionate about industrial hygiene and safety. And I feel at home when I'm in a manufacturing shop. That's really where I'm at. Not in the ivory tower staring at a computer all day.
No doubt.
But I enjoy my job and I think I help a lot of students. So.
I appreciate that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
You guys are both really busy. You're giving a lot back to the community, so thank you for that.
Thank you for what you do. I mean, you bring this awareness to the world.
Yeah, man. It is truly a pleasure. I get to meet people, every week and again, selfishly, I'm learning something every week from the people that I get to have conversations with. So it is truly a pleasure. Ezra Schlecht, Anthony Blake, thank you guys for joining me today. Have a great weekend. I know you both have young children, so you'll have some fun activities going on this weekend.
Yep, all baseball.
Playing catch up.
Yep.
My wife is running the Lexington Half Marathon. She's out in Lexington right now, so good luck, honey. I know you're going to run great. That's tomorrow, I think. And my son, Nick, is coming back in town. He just finished up at Loyola in Chicago, and so he's coming home for a few days before I send him somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
You're good for the weekend.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Stay safe.
Stay safe, yes. And we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.